Everyone, thanks for joining us today for our continuing education session. Really excited to have you here. Really excited about this topic to have Derek and Tanya with us here today. My name is Erin Jensen. I am the Program Coordinator of Community Education and Professional Development at the Transforming Communities Institute. I'm the one that's in charge of these sessions. So if you ever have any questions about continuing education, if you're ever like, hey, where's my certificate? You can reach out to me at erin.jensen@usu.edu. This session is being recorded and all of our sessions are posted on YouTube about a week or so after. So if you want to revisit, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can always find previous sessions there. As you're listening today, please be sure that the name on Zoom matches the name that you're going to want on your continuing education certificate. This is how we verify that you really were here and that you're here for the full 90 minutes. So it's really important that you change your name if it's something else. To receive the continuing education certificate, I'll be posting at the end of the session a link to an evaluation. It'll also go out an email. It's really important that you complete that survey and that you give me your email. That's the only way that you'll receive a certificate for being here today. If you have any questions during the session, you can go ahead and put them in the chat and I will ask our presenters those questions. Or if you just rather unmute, that's okay too. At this time, I'm going to provide the land acknowledgement for Utah State. As a land-grant institution, the Utah State University campuses and centers reside and operate on the territories of the 8 tribes of Utah who have been living, working, and residing on the land from time immemorial. These tribes are the Confederated Tribes of the Goshu Indians, Navajo Nation, Ute Indian Tribe, Northwestern Band of the Shoshone, Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah, San Juan Southern Paiute, Skull Valley Band of the Goshu, and White Mesa Band of the Ute Mountain Ute. We acknowledge these lands carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We recognize elders past and present as peoples who have cared for and continue to care for the land. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous self-governance history, experiences, and the resiliency of the Native people who are still here today. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to our 2 presenters, Derek and Tanya.
Thank you, Erin. So it's good to be with you all today. I just scanning through the names. I see some familiar names here on the list, so that's great. And Tanya will be guiding us through the exercises, and I will play us more of a get out of the way role because she's much better than I am. And but just by way of introduction, Tanya and I are faculty members in social work at USU, and we together run the iSystem Institute, which is the home of mind-body bridging. And so our mission with the iSystem Institute is to teach everybody how to use the simple but complicated but effective practices of mind-body bridging to improve their well-being. And so we do a number of different things, workshops like this, and we have a free clinic that we offer through our program here for anybody that wants more in-depth work in mind-body bridging. Tanya and our practicum students run that. And this is just a, hour and a half together. If you want more experience with this, we usually about once a quarter are offering full day training in this. Tanya leads that. And we do that over Zoom as well, usually. So you can keep an eye on our website for those opportunities if you want a full day. And then if you are interested in becoming fully certified as a mind-body bridging clinician, we have 2 courses that you can take that lead to that certification. And again, more information about that's available on our website. I'll put that in the chat as we get going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya, and she'll guide us through some experiential exercises. And like Erin said, we're happy to take questions. This can be very interactive and is best when it's more interactive, although that's hard with 85 of us. But we'll keep an eye on the chat and do the best we can. All right, Tanya, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, so Derek's here to answer any of the difficult questions that you all may have. So yeah, I see some familiar faces as well and some familiar names, and I'm just really thrilled to be able to be on this platform and be able to share with you all Mind Body Bridging, the work that I've done with Mind Body Bridging personally, and then along with my clients, I've just seen the incredible impact that it can have, like I said, personally, but then also with the clients that I've worked with in a pretty short period of time. I mean, Mind Body Bridging is a modality, a therapeutic modality that tends to kind of get to the root of what's going on pretty quick. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with you today. And yeah, so this training is not going to be you just kind of sit and listen. It's going to be very experiential in nature. So I'm going to pretty much just walk you through a session in Mind Body Bridging. So this will be kind of dual purpose. You'll get a little bit of therapy today in addition to some training. And so typically, this would take 3 or 4 really good solid sessions to kind of go through the whole thing. I think most of you have a pretty good clinical background. So I think in the hour and a half, we can go through all of the concepts of Mind Body Bridging and give you a good solid introduction to the modality. And I'll be using a workbook that we've developed to kind of help. And if anybody would like access to that workbook, please email me, Erin, if you want to kind of make mine and Derek's contact information available, that would be great. But so anyway, so if you don't have a piece of paper, with Mind Body Bridging, we experience first and we explain second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through an exercise, and then I'm going to explain the concepts of that exercise. So that's kind of how we're going to do this today. So I'm going to pull up the workbook. Okay, so this is the workbook. It's really simple. It's just the workbook that we use to teach Mind Body Bridging in our clinic. This is the main workbook that we use in our class. It's not super complicated. It's pretty simple. But this is what we're going to go through today. Just very quickly. We're not going to do the whole rundown of all of it, but we're going to just kind of quickly, I'm going to just take you through the exercises that are involved in this workbook today. So there are 5 different parts to the workbook. And if you take yourself through or take a client through this workbook, you will have covered all of the concepts of Mind Body Bridging with them or yourself. Okay, so if you have a piece of paper and something to write with in front of you, I'm going to have you just in the center, just draw an oval in the center of your map, in the center of the page. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a map. It's called a Mind Body map. So just draw that oval in the center of the page. And I'm going to have you in that oval write down a situation that's troubling to you. So it can be anything. It can have to do with work. You're obviously not going to share it. So this will be just personal for you. But yeah, I want you to just go ahead and write down a situation that's bothering. It can be a global problem. It can be a personal problem. It can be any situation that just kind of is on your mind that kind of gets to you. Give everybody a moment to get that down. Some of us have more accessible troubling situations than others. Okay. All right, so next what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just write any thoughts that you have about that situation all around that oval. Just anything that comes to mind. And we've got 2 rules. You just need to write quickly and don't edit. Right? So just get anything that comes to mind about that situation all down on the map. Mhm. All right, so if you're still having some thoughts, go ahead and keep writing. But now just kind of at the bottom of your map, I want you to notice any tension you feel in your body. As you're thinking about this situation, as these thoughts start to spin, where do you feel tension in your body? So I want you to name the location of it, right? Some of us are chest people, we feel it in our chest. But then what does it feel like in your chest? Kind of describe it, right? Does it feel tight? Does it feel like heavy, like a weight? What does it feel like? So we want to get as descriptive as we can about this body tension, because typically what we tend to do is we tend to ignore it, right? We tend to push it away sometimes. And so this is a really important aspect of awareness that we need to kind of just start giving some awareness about, right? So get the location down and then just describe that body tension the best you can. And then at the bottom of the map, I want you to just describe your mind clutter, right? And by mind clutter, I mean, right? What's your mind doing? While all these thoughts are spinning, what does your mind feel like? What's it doing? Just kind of describe that. Right? Typically, when troubling situations come about in our lives, our body gets dysregulated, our mind gets dysregulated. So just we want to bring some words to that. We want to kind of describe it. And then we want to bring some awareness to our actions, right? So when your body feels like this and your mind feels like this, how do you act, right? What do you do, right? So I want you to write that down at the bottom, right? How do you act when your mind and body feel this way, right? And typically, what happens is people will say, well, I feel anxious, or, they'll want to talk about how they feel, but what we're really curious about is how do you act, right? What do you do? Right? Do you shut down? Do you stay quiet? Do you not stay quiet? Right? What do you do in your body? This is kind of it's a lot of self-reflection. All right, so now that you kind of have all this down on the map, what you've just mapped is what we call your identity system, or we call it I system for short, right? So your identity system is a mind-body system that gets dysregulated when your identity is threatened in some way, right? So if you kind of take a look at this situation, look at all those thoughts, kind of put all this together, just take a moment and just reflect, right? You don't have to write it down necessarily, but I just want you to take a moment and reflect, right? How is your identity being threatened by this situation? Right? Right? Who you are, what you're about, right? As we've gone through our lives, we've all developed this identity, this idea of who we are, this perception of what we're about. And that somehow is being threatened by this situation. And that gets your identity system overactive, right? This mind-body system gets overactive. And so we want to get to know this identity system. We want to understand it, right? We want to understand what triggers this identity system, what gets it overactive, what kind of gets it going. We want to kind of understand what are some of the thoughts associated with it. We want to understand our behaviors, right? What does it kind of cause us to feel pushed to do? We want to kind of have some awareness, and the more awareness we can have over our identity system, the more we can manage it. Okay. So that's what we're doing here, right? That's what we've done. We've kind of just created some awareness about our identity system. This is what's also. By the way, I will be using the words identity system and I system interchangeably, right? So I system is just short for identity system. So Derek and I work with the I System Institute at Utah State. So, is there a question? Nope. Okay. All right, so yeah, so this is your identity system. So we've mapped it all out. You've got it in front of you. So now we're going to do some work with this. We're going to kind of get to the bottom of some of what's going on here. Actually, hold on. I'm kind of thinking about. Eric, what are your thoughts? Should we do the two-part or?
Yeah, let's do map 2 right now.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to turn the page over. And I'm going to have you write the exact same situation in the center of the map that you wrote the first time. Just write it exactly the same way. So when we are in our identity system, or when our identity system is overactive, our thinking tends to become very self-referential, right? We are concentrating on ourselves. It's most of those thoughts on your map are probably about you. And if they're not really about you, as we dig into a little bit more, I think that you'll find, oh wait, this really is about me. So just sometimes what we can do to just kind of rest this identity system is we can literally just bring our awareness outside of ourselves using our senses, right? We call this bridging awareness. So what I'm going to have you do is we're just going to take about, I don't know, 30 seconds, not a real long time. Just want you to take 30 seconds and just fully bring your awareness outside of yourself. Okay. So you can listen to some sounds in the background, right? And try to just, if a thought comes to your mind, just go back to focusing on that sound that you can hear. Right? Just notice the temperature of the room that you're in. I want you to just maybe notice your feet on the floor, your seat in the chair. Just notice that weight of your body. Right? Maybe notice your clothes and how they feel on your body. Just really heighten your awareness. Just keep listening to those sounds in the background. Kind of really try to focus on them. So now I'm going to have you pick up your pen and just notice how it feels in your hand. Keep your awareness outside of yourself. Keep kind of listening to those sounds in the background. And I want you to look at that situation that you've written in the center of the page. I'm going to have you just write any thoughts that come to mind about that situation. Just like you did before, just write any thoughts that come to mind. And keep your awareness outside. And just like we did at at the bottom of the first map, I want you to just notice body tension, right? Just what's shifted or what's happened with your body tension. Just kind of really pay attention to that again. What's happened to your mind clutter, right? Kind of note that. And then the same thing we did the first time, right? How do you act when your body feels like this and your mind feels like this? How do you act? What do you do? How do you tend to behave when you're in this space? All right, so now I want you to write 1 or 2 words at the top of this map that describe this map. Just kind of describe it. Sometimes it takes a second to reflect on it to kind of come up with that. And then turn the page over to the first map. And I want you to write 1 or 2 words that describe that map. All right, so if you're comfortable sharing in the chat, I'd like you to maybe share what 2 words or what were the words, right, that were on your first and second map, or what shifted, right? What shifted for you? What was different about your first map versus your second map? And I'll kind of keep an eye on that. From panic to calm. Fearful, calm. Okay, thank you. Okay, disturbed, not disturbed. Anger, sadness. Out of control to quiet, anxious to grounded. Frantic versus nuanced and hopeful. I like that. Uncertain to hopeful, seeing a lot of hopeful. Stressed, then I can do this. Okay, so okay, the first not me, the second is a little bit more authentic. You guys are falling right into our trap. Tense to calm, reactive to mindful. Crisis versus doable, good. Tense to calm, reactive to mindful. Okay, so stress to confidence, also felt a wave of emotion come over me as I started the second map. Yeah, that is to be expected. That can happen. Yeah. So you're starting to get a sense of how this process can really, 1, bring up a lot of things, and 2, how this process can kind of get to the root of what's going on, right? It kind of brings a sense of understanding, a sense of hope. A word I don't think I specifically saw in there, but a lot of times clients will describe resilience, right? An ability to kind of move through a difficult situation with a little bit more clarity, a little bit more grounded in reality. So the second space on this second map, thank you all for sharing, is something we call natural functioning. Right. And I liked the person who said, let me kind of go back a little bit. The first map was not me and the second map was authentic. I really loved that. And that's really what we're talking about, right? In our natural functioning space, which is the second map, right? We are who we are naturally, right? Who we were created to be in our natural functioning space without this extra hindrance of the identity system holding us back, right? In the first map, a lot of times we can't see things clearly, right? Derek uses the analogy that we've got bugs on the windshield and it's hard to see and it's kind of hard to gauge, right? We just had snow yesterday, right? And there's that snow, or when you have ice on your windshield and it's just hard to see and it's kind of hard to see clearly. Whereas when we're natural functioning, we're a little bit more able to see things a little bit more clearly. So that's the whole goal of mind body bridging. We want to help people move from this identity system functioning to what we call natural functioning, right? That no matter what happens, no matter what difficult situation comes our way, we're going to be able to approach that situation in this natural functioning space versus this overactive I system space where we're functioning in that way. So that was, yeah, go ahead,
Maybe
Derek.
I could just pop in
Please.
and say a little bit too, that fundamentally what we're talking about is how one uses their gift of awareness. So awareness is a gift. The ability to be self-aware is a gift. Then, as far as we know, no other life form has that capacity like we do. But that gift can be turned into a weapon if it's misused. And so, our awareness, of self should just sort of be gentle and in the background and not in the foreground, at least the vast majority of the time. And our awareness is best used when it's out, just like you did when you used your senses. Your awareness transitioned to outside the self and just to connect with your surroundings. And so you just move back into your actual life, what you're doing in this moment, instead of your sort of fictional life, which is the life that one lives in their head. And that's what mind body bridging is. Another way of thinking about what we're after this shift away from this highly self-referential mind body state to a one that is just engaged with its environment. Yeah. Charisse.
Do you have a suggestion for those who are very muted or numb due to trauma of how they can start grasping without being over functioning?
Yeah, Tanya, you want to take that first?
Well, yeah, and I think if you hang with us, we're going to kind of get to that, right? We have some tools, some very specific hands-on tools that we teach clients of how to diffuse, how to identify and diffuse all these different kind of there's these different components of the I system that we're going to grab or get into here in just a moment. And when a client can kind of come to awareness of those and how the I system is holding them back, it can really kind of create some freedom and some, ability to kind of diffuse what's happening.
Right. And I'll just add that, the earliest research that was done with mind body bridging down at the VA, focused a lot on with veterans and post-traumatic stress. And it's in that experience and in our experiences, we work a lot with first responders and others that have experienced trauma. It gives them some tools to kind of take the reins of their mind, to label the things that are happening in their mind, and to not over identify with any of it. But that's a great question, Charisse. Thank you.
Yeah. I just put in the chat the spot on our website that talks about the research that's been done with mind body bridging and some of the publications that are out there for everybody to reference. You can probably just take note of that and reference it afterward, because we're going to dig right back into where we were. Okay, so now let's kind of go into a little bit more about the identity system. Okay, so I'm going to have you turn your map back over, go to the first map that you started, and we're going to just do some work with that map. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is typically something, what we're kind of just doing a whole kind of crammed in session right now is typically done over the course of 2 to 3 to 4 sessions, kind of depending on how people are responding. So I just want to kind of make note of that as we're going through this. All right, so kind of what triggers the identity system? What gets it going? What causes this overactive I system? And typically what it is when you look at this situation, you have certain requirements that are not being met, right? Requirements maybe for yourself or for other people or for the situation itself or for the world, right? Certain requirements are not being met. In other words, things are not as they should be somehow. So I want you to kind of go around your map. First, kind of notice the thoughts that have the most intensity to them. And just put some check marks, circle, whatever. Just mark those thoughts that just really, when you look at them, they've got a lot of tension. They create a lot of tension for you. We'll go through and do that quickly. And these thoughts that you've marked have a lot of tension surrounding them because a requirement is not being met, right? You have some requirement that's tied to this thought that is not being met, and that's why it's creating this tension, right? Our body tension and mind clutter is kind of our sign. It's kind of our signals that our identity system is overactive, right? So we want to be able to identify these requirements. So I'm going to just have you on your map, just draw a line from each of those thoughts that you marked. And I want you to identify what requirement is not being met. In other words, how should this be, right? You probably wrote that thought down because it's not how it should be, right? So I'm going to have you just write, how should that be or shouldn't that be? Just somehow connect it to that thought on your map and kind of do that with the thoughts that have the most intensity to them for you on your map. And requirements we very often write in the form of a should statement or a shouldn't statement or must or has to be, right? They should be this way. I should be this way. This should be happening. Or they shouldn't be this way, or I shouldn't be that way. Right? We just want to start identifying these requirements. So requirements, they're expectations, right? You have an expectation that this would be a certain way, and that expectation wasn't met, right? But requirements kind of go beyond just a regular expectation, right? Like I had the expectation yesterday, for those who are in Cache Valley or up here in the Logan area, it snowed, right? I have an expectation that when it's almost May, it shouldn't snow, right? I just don't like it when it snows in May, right? But guess what? I didn't, that didn't cause me any angst. I just put on my boots and my sweater and I'm like, okay, back to all my winter clothes, right? And put my coat on and moved on with my life. It didn't hold me back, right? It didn't cause me any, dysregulation, right? I just have an expectation that it doesn't snow when it's almost May, right? But a requirement is an expectation that holds a lot of power, right? It's connected to your identity in some way, right? This is who you are, what you're about. So when these requirements aren't met, it's not just disappointing, right? It's devastating, right? We have a really hard time with it when these requirements are not met. So we want to be able to identify those. We want to be able to identify what those are, because if we can see it, if it's in front of us, then we can manage it, right? The identity system is kind of operating in a system in the brain called the default mode network, which most of you are probably very familiar with, right? The default mode network, it's just kind of that automatic space in our brain where things aren't completely rational, right? It's just kind of automatically happening, just kind of shy of our awareness. And so when this requirement isn't met, when these requirements aren't met, you know, it's not like we just go on with our lives like I did when it snowed yesterday, right? I just put my boots on and off I go, right? That's not typically what happens when a requirement isn't met, right? When a requirement isn't met, it causes a lot of angst, right? We've got our thoughts start to spin. And so what happens is we have what we call depressor thoughts that start to spin around. So I want you to we're just going to work with one of those requirements. So choose one of those requirements on your map. Just pick one and draw a line from it just to kind of connect that. And I want you to write down what thoughts start to spin in your mind when this requirement is not met, right? So when this does not happen as it should, what negative thoughts come to mind, right? And if you have thoughts, I just want to make a little side note here. If your thoughts are about action, right? Like, I'm just going to give up, or let's save those for later. We're going to get to those. But I want you to just concentrate on what are the thoughts? What are just the negative thoughts that come to mind when these requirements aren't met? Right? We call these depressor thoughts. And as you write them down and think of them, that terminology probably makes sense. Right? And our depressor thoughts, the thing about a depressor thought, right? We all have positive, negative thoughts that come and go, right? But a depressor thought is a little bit different in that it doesn't just come and go, right? It starts to spin. And our mind tends to spin these into storylines, right? So this thought doesn't just come and go, it starts to spin into a story. So next to that thought, that depressor thought that you've written down, right? What are the storylines? What are the stories that you tell yourself about that thought? Right? So if the thought is, you know, my boss is mad at me, right? What are the storylines? What do you tell yourself, right? I'm going to lose my job. It's right. What's going to happen? What does this mean about you? What does this mean about them? What does it mean about the situation, right? What storylines start to spin for you when this thought comes to mind? And a lot of times these storylines, again, they're not right in front of us, right? They're not something that we have full awareness about, right? There's stuff that's kind of spinning in the background. So I'm going to give you a moment to kind of sit with that and let those come to mind. So if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable at this point, that's kind of what happens, right? Our depressor thoughts, our depressor storylines, they don't feel good, right? They feel uncomfortable. We don't like it. We don't like this space. Okay. And when we feel uncomfortable, right, we don't, right, I'm wearing a sweater today because it's cold outside, because I didn't want to be uncomfortable. I didn't want to be cold, right? So we tend to have these kind of gut reactions when this discomfort sets in with these depressor thoughts, right? And so next to this storyline that you've written down, I want you to just think about, right? What are those gut reactions? What do you do? What do you feel pressured to do in response to this storyline when it plays? When this discomfort of this depressor really kicks in, what do you feel pressured to do? Right? What's kind of that gut reaction? You feel just this little bit of panic kind of sets in, and you just, what's your go-to? Just write that down. Right? Sometimes it's thoughts. Um, or maybe it's actions, right? So we call this your fixer, right? We call this gut reaction due to these depressor thoughts. And I think some of you, I'm just seeing a little bit in the chat, I think some of you are seeing this can get, like, kind of like I said on the onset, that this can kind of get to the root of what's going on with clients pretty quickly, right? Because these depressor thoughts have a lot of power to them. So this fixer kicks in, right? And our fixers can be lots of different things, right? It can be, I shut down, I just don't talk, right? It can be stonewalling. It can be addiction, right? Addictive behaviors. This is where the fixer can come in sometimes, but it's just this gut reaction to this storyline that's playing in our mind, right? It's not our well thought out response. And so what we want to do, what we just did is we just kind of identified your identity system. We got it all down on the page, right? We've got it now. And I think this is kind of what some of you are working with or asking about. Now what we need to do, what are we going to do with it, right? We need to take the power out of this I system, out of this identity system. In other words, we need to diffuse it, right? We need to diffuse these requirements. We need to diffuse these depressor thoughts, diffuse these fixer thoughts, right? And part of what we just did is just bringing them to our awareness helps us diffuse them. Sometimes that's just what a client needs, right? Or what we need is just, okay, wow, now I see it. And that just takes the power out of it, right? But sometimes we need to do a little bit more work with it. A lot of times we need to do a little bit more work with this. So let's talk about how do we diffuse some of these things. All right, let's talk about how to diffuse our requirements. Okay, so just take a look at that requirement that you wrote down. Okay. And I want you to just sit with it for a moment and just recognize it. Recognize it and identify it. And we're going to label it, right? That's my requirement. Literally say that, bring it into awareness and just label it for what it is. It's a requirement, right? Because here's the thing about requirements. No requirement can be met 100% of the time. And this requirement that you have is not being met at this moment, right? So let's just acknowledge it. Let's label it for what it is. That's a requirement, and acknowledge that's not being met. And then just take a moment and bring your awareness outside of yourself like we did a moment ago, right? Just acknowledge that requirement, label it, that's my requirement. And then just take a moment, just a quick moment, and just, where are you right now, right? What can you feel? What can you see? Bring your awareness outside of yourself. Listen to the sounds in the background. And just do that maybe a few times with that requirement that you have written down there on your map. This is a very intentional practice. Okay. And sometimes I'll have clients in session do this out loud. If they're comfortable. Okay. What was your experience with that if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat? You were able to identify it, label it, step back from it for a moment. Okay. Um, okay, so Stephanie says the anxiety was reduced a little bit each time. Yeah. Um, facing what's hard is not easy, right? By the way, I think in our introduction, Derek and I never said, hey, this is going to be in really easy practices, right? This is tough. This is the work of therapy. This is hard. So I just appreciate everything everybody's saying. Felt my ADHD kick in, disappear quickly. Yeah, it can be challenging, right? Because with ADHD, that default mode network is really active. And so being very intentional about calming it down can be pretty challenging. A bit of a switch. Not solid, but yeah, just a thought. I felt anxious, rapid heartbeat. Sometimes diffusing requirements, right? This takes practice. It takes time. But let's move into the next phase, right? We want to diffuse these depressor thoughts that are associated with this requirement. Derek, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say as we get ready to move on that, yeah, there's all of those reactions are just part of the I system reaction. That's the thing to remember is that the I system gets disturbed by this, and the power is knowing what it is that's happening to us. My I system is disturbed because of this. And it's not, and so we don't over identify it. We can just label it. Yeah, I have a requirement about that. The thing that we want to teach about requirements is that what we actually do to diffuse them is we do nothing with them. Now we're going to feel a lot of energy and gravity towards doing something about them. But as Tanya is going to lead us through the next part of this, that's just part of the I system's grappling with all of this, grasping. And so there's just so much relief in just being able to say, oh, yeah, I see what's happening to me, and this is what it is. And I actually don't have to do anything about it at all. And then we just begin to move on. So yeah, Tanya will kind of keep us moving around the depressor and fixer diffusing.
Yeah. So then that depressor kicks in, right? That storyline kicks in and things start to spin. And so let's just kind of talk about what this is from a logical perspective, right? Let's use our prefrontal cortex for a second. These are thoughts, right? And if we were to define what a thought is, right? It's neurons, synapses, all the things in the brain, right? It's a biological function is a thought, right? And we can't always control what thoughts come in, but we can control what thoughts we give energy to, right? We can control what we do with these thoughts. And so here's what we want to do. And I think Dr. Tolson just described it very quickly. What we want to do with this thought is nothing, right? We want to just let it be a thought. Similar to kind of diffusing that requirement, we want to label it, right? I'm having the thought right now that whatever the thought is, right? That I'm not good enough, or that this bad thing is going to happen, whatever, just label it and then let yourself feel that discomfort for a moment. And then that's just a thought, right? We're going to label it for what it is. It is a thought. And then again, bring your awareness outside of yourself. Bring your awareness to the moment. So I'm going to have you do that with that depressor thought, that storyline. I'm going to have you do that. Just take a moment and say that thought. And it is probably uncomfortable at first, right? Give it a few times and label it's just a thought. Bring your awareness outside of yourself. And just again, say the thought. Label it. Bring your awareness outside of yourself. We just want to take the gas out of it because right now it's spinning, right? When our eye system gets a hold of it, it starts to spin, and we just want to take some of that gas out of it and let it just be what it is. Don't forget the sensory awareness, right? Don't forget to kind of listen to those sounds in the background. Notice the weight of your body. Don't forget that as you kind of do this practice, right?
I just
then-
maybe, sorry, Tanya, as we keep moving forward, sometimes people that we train, you know, including the clients that we teach, will say, well, what if the story is true? And my answer is, the simple answer is, who cares? And the more academic answer is, anytime you're under the spell of the eye system, your ability to see the truth is compromised. So let's not get into the truth until, you know, your eye system is rested. Then you can start to see the truth of the situation and of yourself. But most of these storyline, well, not most, I'll just say all of them are a twisting of the truth, are a corruption. And you just have to be identified for what they are. They're just a bunch of thoughts strung together. Your eye system's trying to struggle with something, and so yeah, that's one tool to use in session. Is doesn't matter, number one, and number two, just know that you can be in a state of self-deception and not see the truth. You can come to accept that these stories are the truth, and that's the whole problem with the eye system, is we come to see that that's who we are. And what we're trying to teach overall with mind-body bridging is that that is not who you are. That is a false self.
Yeah. A way that I'll answer that in session a lot of times is, yeah, maybe this is going to happen. Maybe this is true. What good is it doing to let it continue to spin and to let it continue to give it gas, right? To continue to fuel it, because we know where it's going to land, right? It's going to land in this fixer space, which most often is not our most optimal response to any given situation, right? As you look at your fixer there, that's probably not your favorite way to respond to that situation. It's usually either an over response or an under response, right? But it's not usually optimal. And so we know that if we let our eye system, we keep fueling it, and we keep letting this spin, that we're going to land in this fixer space, which isn't the most optimal functioning. Okay, I want to share something with you, because this is what tends to happen. This is in our workbook. This is what we call the depressor fixer cycle. Okay. So here's what happens, right? A requirement is violated or a requirement is not met. And then what happens is we start here with the depressor, right? That depressor starts creating and generating negative thoughts, right? Those negative thoughts start to kick in. And then those thoughts, right? They don't just stay thoughts, they create stories. We create stories about what's going to happen. What does this mean? Right? So I'm not enough. All these storylines start to get created. And remember, most of this is happening just shy of our awareness. And it's happening in a nanosecond. It's happening so fast because it's automatic, right? This is part of that default mode network, which is a really automatic space. So those storylines get created. We start to feel that discomfort, right? This mind clutter, body tension sits in. And we are slowing down a really fast process right now, right? That mind clutter, body tension sets in. And then we start to feel broken, right? We're broken, they're broken, the situation's broken. There's this sense of discomfort. There's this overall sense of damage, the sense of brokenness that kind of overtakes us, that's the discomfort that you're feeling when those depressor thoughts kind of spin around. This overall sense of damage or brokenness. And when something's broken, what do? Right? We want to fix it. Especially those of us in the helping profession, right? We're fixers. We like to fix things. A lot of us, that's why we got into this field, right? So these fixer thoughts come about, right? These storylines start to spin around, these fixer thoughts and storylines, this kind of gut reaction, right? Thoughts about, I'm just going to quit my job, or I'm going to, who cares is a very often fixer thought when you really do care, right? That's why you're saying, I don't care. So these fixer thoughts start to spin, and then fixer behavior, right? Which again, like I said, could be shutting down. It could be an over response, that kind of thing. And sometimes, and our fixers can come at quite a cost a lot of times, right? I look at my own life and even just my work in the field of social work, right? Before I learned my body bridging, I came to that in a very fixer space, and it came at quite a cost. It came at a cost to my self-care. It came at a cost to my family a lot of times. And so it's just really important to kind of be aware of these fixers and how they are really kind of managing our lives sometimes. So anyway, these fixer thoughts these fixer behaviors kick in, and guess what? Our fixer is never going to be enough to satisfy the requirement or to satisfy the depressor, right? You can eat as much ice cream as you want. It's not going to make the depressor thought go away, right? It's not going to meet that requirement. So guess what? Now I had a whole pint of ice cream and now my depressor kicks in, right? My depressor kicks in and says, it's not enough. It's not good enough, right? I still have the problem. And now I feel guilty because I just ate all this ice cream, right? And so we call this the depressor fixer cycle. And this is the spin that people get stuck in so often. And when I ask my clients, I'll show them this picture and I'll say, how much of your mental energy is in this space? Right? And very often I'll hear 90%. 70%. Their mental energy is moving in this depressor fixer cycle, right? Some of us spend more time in our depressor space. Some of us spend more time in our fixer with all those fixer storylines going, but this can really consume a person quite a bit. So we want to be able to diffuse, to not let this cycle continue to spin. We want to interrupt this cycle. And we want to do it in our moment-to-moment life. So we did the map, right? And the whole purpose of the map is to bring awareness into our eye system, right? But I'm not going to be able to map every moment of every day when hard things come up. So what we want to do is we want to become aware of this depressor fixer cycle so that when it pops up in the moment, I know what it is. I can recognize it in the moment, right? I can feel myself being pressured to move into that fixer space and I can identify it, right? I can identify those depressor thoughts because I've identified them on the map. I know what they are. Now they're in front of me and I can manage it when it's in front of me. When it was spinning behind me, I couldn't really manage it, right? But now that it's in front of me, I can manage it in the moment when it comes up, right? When this requirement isn't being met, now I can articulate it, right? I have words for it. I know what's happening, right? Go ahead, Derek.
Oh, that's great, Tanya. I just coming back to that, how much of your mental energy is spent on this, how much of your awareness is gobbled up by this. And yeah, that's often the answer, right? And I like to follow that up with a question of what could you do with that 70%
Yeah.
of your awareness that's being gobbled up by this black hole, right? And of course, the answers vary in ways, but they all come down to one thing. I could be present. I
Yeah.
could bring to bear my presence into whatever I'm doing. And wow, how powerful is that, right?
Mhm.
How powerful is that to be able to reduce the amount of time that we're sucked into this vortex and we're just giving that energy out to being present in our day-to-day lives. The other thing I'll just mention too is sometimes we come up with these elaborate schemes to get better at this game, if we want to call it a game. And the only way to win this game is to not play it. So that's again what mind body bridging is about, is not playing it. I'm not playing. I'm not doing this. I know what that is. I know that's my fixer. I know what that heaviness is. This is my depressor. I know I have a requirement about this. I'm not playing this game. And then the awareness is shifted away from the game to your actual life, what you're doing right here, right now.
So I use this with first responders quite a bit. They like it because they don't have to talk as much. Um, and you know, my selling point is always, you want that optimal awareness, that present moment awareness when you're on the job, because, all the things that go into, being a first responder, it's very high stress. You got to make decisions, split life and death decisions in the moment, right? But what they don't realize, what's happening very often is their attention, right? We don't just want that present moment awareness at work, but what about your present moment awareness at home? Right? What about that present moment awareness when I'm at the grocery store, right? Or when I'm just driving my car? What about just being present, wherever you are? And that's really what we're shooting at, right? What we're gaining, what we're trying to get across is this whole idea of the more you try to entangle yourself with the identity system, the more dysregulated you're going to be, right? We don't have to fix the identity system. We don't have to, there's not all these tips and tricks and, do this little thing and do this. We really just want to just let it be. Let it be and come back to our lives. And it sounds very simple, but as a lot of you experienced in our session today, it's not easy, right? This isn't always easy. And so it does take practice. It does take practice mapping. It does take practice in the moment, using the practices in the moment, in the day-to-day moments of our lives. And so, yeah, it's actually quite a bit of work, but therapy is work.
Tanya, there's a really great question in the chat. Someone
Oh, yeah.
said the depressor fixer cycle seems very similar to an OCD cycle. Has there been any research done on mind-body bridging effectiveness in the treatment of OCD?
Derek, I'll let you answer that with the academic answer, and then I can give a practical answer.
Yeah, so I just was typing up an answer to that and put it in the chat, but I approach OCD as the fixer side of this cycle. The compulsions are fixers in my view, and there are depressors that are driving those, and so those need to be recognized and diffused as a pair. And then there are requirements tied up in that too. They always come in the threes, right? For the Star Wars fans, you know, they say Siths come in twos. Well, your eye system comes in threes: requirements, depressors, fixers. And so you need to kind of bring all that out into awareness and diffuse it. But no specific research yet done on OCD. Hopefully somebody will do that.
Or eating disorders. Another question came up about eating disorders.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I would just kind of, the thing about MBB that I think is really cool is it kind of just integrates lots of different modalities, and one of them is exposure therapy, right? When you really sit with those depressor thoughts, right? Allow yourself to feel the discomfort of it, right? That's in a sense some exposure therapy, right? I had a client who, right, she had a lot of fear. She just had these fears that it kind of remnant from COVID. If I bring this in, I'm gonna make my family sick and they're all going to die, right? And so we had to really just do some work around really that exposure of those depressor thoughts, right? Just really diffusing those depressor thoughts about death. And it wasn't easy for her. This was really a difficult process of being able to diffuse all of that. And she did experience healing from that. But yeah, like Derek said, there's not any specific research on it. And the same with eating disorders. I've had several clients with eating issues with I wouldn't say an eating disorder necessarily, but issues with food. And we've just been able to work through that because the eating disorder piece of it, right? That's a fixer, right? That's just, I feel this compulsion to eat because I've got this depressor storyline, something is playing, right? And then it creates this fixer, this compulsion to eat or not eat or whatever it might be. So yeah, a lot of mental health disorders can be kind of really looked at through the lens of the identity system and pretty simply understood, I think, in a lot of ways.
It's very transdiagnostic in that sense, and that's becoming more and more of a topic of discussion in the mental health field is the transdiagnostic nature of things. And so, you know, we feel like the eye system hindrance is fundamental to so many of the things that we're dealing with. I mean, you can see it in addiction. Some of the early evidence-based work done with MBB is in substance abuse. We just published a new manual with Cambridge University Press that's substance abuse focused. And so you can see that the depressor fixer cycle is, you know, if you understand addiction through that lens. So anyway, it's just very transdiagnostic.
All right. So we really did just cover kind of all of the components of mind body bridging. You guys know it all now. You learned it all. It really is a very simple modality, right? There's not, you know, I've studied other modalities and and of course I'm most familiar with this one because this is what I do with my whole existence, but there's not all these little tips and tricks and fixers and you know, all these different things that we don't have to fix anything, right? We just need to diffuse, take the power out of it, take the gas out of it. But it's the identifying all of that piece that through the mapping that really can be powerful, And if your client is really willing to do the work, you can make some really big progress in just a few sessions if you've got somebody who's really motivated. All right, so we've got about 20 minutes left. I feel like I kind of rushed through that, and I would love for Derek and I to be able to, or Derek, if you've got an additional comment, I'd love to be able to answer any questions.
Yeah, and then we're happy to take questions or whatever, but I just want to come back to, again, kind of what it's all about. Mind-body bridging is a method of subtraction. whereas so many things feel like they're add-ons. Mind-body bridging is simply subtracting the hindrance of the eye system from our everyday functioning. That's what it is. And in order to do that, you have to be able to see it. You have to be able to recognize it and then label it for what it is. And so much of mind-body bridging is not action, it's inaction. I don't need to act on that fixer. I know what it is. There's a depressor that's driving that. What is that? And these are all just my thoughts. I am not these thoughts. These are thoughts that I have. And our eye system, we learn, likes to grab on to certain thoughts. It gets really clingy to them. It tries to, we have thousands of thoughts every day that come in and out of our awareness without any fanfare. But the eye system locks on to certain of them that are tied to requirements, and it just tries to make a big deal out of everything. Like our existence depends on it. And so it's just being able to recognize all that eye system drama for what it is and stepping back from it. And what do you do after that? Well, you live your life. You bring your awareness to the present and you just do the next thing. And there's so much power in that, in using your awareness for what it was meant to be used for, which is just doing the things that we need to do, experiencing and not, there's a risk in all of this that you can, clients and even therapists can get really over analytical about the mapping, and analysis is the last thing we want done. Uh, we just want recognition and shifting back to natural functioning orientation.
Okay, so I am posting in the chat just a couple resources that we have. So we have free online workshops that we offer to anybody in the world. They're online, so anybody can attend who has access to the internet. And our practicum students usually run that. And they run that during the lunch hour. And it's a 4-week session. And so people can just have access to that. And like I said, it's free. Then I also posted our clinician training. It's just a 1-day training. And we kind of go
Next
through what
one's coming up in June, right,
yeah,
Tanya?
June 6th will be the next one. I don't think I
6th?
have that flyer updated yet, but I need to get that done.
Yeah.
Yeah, June 6th will be the next.
So you can watch this website for an update to register for that. And that's a full day of CEUs, and the cost is what, $150 for the full day?
Yeah. And then for MBB courses, if you're interested in those, here's a link for that. And this is the certification courses. If you have any interest in becoming certified in mind body bridging, there's that too. So, yeah. So any questions that anybody has about the modality, about the inner workings of it, just practically what this looks like in clinical setting. I work with first responders, so I always am ready for some kind of challenge. They're always challenging me and things.
I've got a question for you.
Mhm.
I can see the possibility of this with so many clients, and I'm so excited about it. How do you introduce it to clients? And like, what's the introduction process? Like, how do you tell them about it and what to expect, I guess would be my question.
Just like we did today, experience first, explain later. So we want it to be very experiential, embodied, and then say, okay, we did this, and now you've met your eye system, right? What is your body tension and mind clutter? That's your eye system. So yeah, we always lead them through the experiential exercises first. And that's a little bit different for a lot of us that are trained with explain first and then experience. It's the reverse of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the workbook is is kind of impersonal as that may sound. The workbook is really helpful because it can people can refer to it later, right? They've kind of got all the wording there. So if they're like, okay, what was this requirement thing? Or, they've got it all written down there on their map. I have a lot of clients who, they keep all their maps so they can refer to them later. And yeah, so that's but kind of the way that if I'm giving just a really quick elevator pitch for, hey, here's what we're going to do, I'll just kind of, one of the ways, I mean, kind of depending on what I know is going on with the client, right? So if there's some disassociation going on or just anxiety, right? I'll just talk about, right, bridging that mind and body, right? Your body's here, your mind is over here. We're going to bring it together, right? We're going to help you be more where you are and more present. So that'll just might be a quick pitch and then usually clients can go, oh yeah, I need, I can really relate to that. So.
The workbook, you give the workbook to the client.
Yeah. I mean, just print it out and give it to them. I think it's like 50 some pages or something. Yeah, I'll just give it out.
Sometimes what I'll do too is if I don't have the workbook or whatever right then, we just use a legal pad and let's map it out. And then you could say, to practice this, at some point I'll email you the workbook or I'll give it to you and you can go back and review it. So it's, but sometimes right in session, you just work through the workbook and, that works well.
Yeah, some clients really like that structure and predictability. Some clients really like that.
Sharice, you have a hand up.
Do you have any other practical strategies for bringing awareness outside of yourself other than senses?
Senses is where it's at, and there's so many different ways to work with that. You just have to be engaged with your environment, and the senses were built for that purpose. So yeah, I don't know of anything more fancy than just paying attention to what's going on around you.
Well, and we really want it to be something that you can do in the moment, right? Something that I can do in a split second moment, right? I'm driving and I feel myself starting to spin, right? I can feel the steering wheel. I can listen to the engine, right? Feel the vibration of the car, right? Or if I'm in the shower and I kind of sense myself spin, I can kind of just feel the water, feel the temperature of it, right? Just bring myself into the moment. And so we really do want it to be something that people can do in the heat of the moment, because that's when your eye system strikes, right? It strikes when something pops up and you're kind of taken aback by it.
Do you also, a follow-up question, do you also, once it sounds like kind of getting grounded, but do you also explore what was spinning in their mind at the same time once they're outside of themselves? Like, is it used in tandem?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, in a sense. The mapping is essentially an opportunity to go back and watch that game film of a past moment, right? And so that's what mapping really is, so that we can recognize the action of the eye system in real time. But the going back and looking at it in real time, we don't want much time actually spent on that. We don't want analysis. We just want recognition. Oh, I was getting on that treadmill. I'm stepping off. I had a depressor. This was my depressor that was pulling me into the treadmill. This was my requirement. This was my fixer. And then that's it. Nothing more.
Yeah, Jonathan, you brought up a good question. Could you set up the environment to be more engaging to the senses, ambient music, diffusers, etc.? And Derek, you may have a different answer than I do about this. I have a few things in my office, like I've got some fidget toys, I've got some stones and that kind of thing. But I try not to. I'm kind of deliberate about not setting up that environment because, right, how often are you going to be able to be like, oh, I smell that smell and I can, you're just, right, this meditative state isn't something that we can recreate in the moment when we're needing to diffuse our eye system in the moment. And so that's my approach with it. Derek, you may have a different answer.
That's exactly my answer. We want to communicate that you have everything that you need on board. I mean, nothing wrong with the smelly stuff and all that. That's okay. We're not gonna pick an argument with that, but you really don't need it. And because you have everything that you need always with you. And that's just another sort of foundational part of mind body bridging. Your natural functioning is always there. It's your natural state. And so it's always there for the having. It's just removing what separates you from it, and then you're there. And so, yeah, we don't have to go to the top of the mountain to get there. We can be right in the middle of a tough meeting, and we can get there. We can be right in the middle of a hard thing, a hard space with a client where we're having a lot of reaction, and we just use our senses right there and then to stay with it. And that's the beautiful thing about the practice.
That's a really good question. That's a really
Yeah,
good
well, I
question.
love that question.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Are there any prompts that you like to use when you have a client that is really struggling to identify the thoughts that they're having? As soon as you ask somebody what they're thinking, their mind goes blank. And especially if, they're feeling things without, like leading them
Yeah.
or giving them thoughts.
Yeah.
What do you do in those
I
situations?
probably know what Tanya will say. I'll give her the final word on this question, but that's where mapping is super powerful, because they get to just kind of ride it out. So, yep.
But if
Yeah.
they get stuck, even in the mapping part, like, well, I
Yeah,
don't know
we
what I'm
just,
thinking. I don't know. I don't
Tanya,
know.
you can talk about your experience with a lot with first responders. You just kind of have to help them along, and you be patient. And it's a struggle for a lot of folks, and that's okay. But they've got to be able to do it.
Yeah. So, I think that's where, sometimes our fixer can get in the way, or at least this has been my experience with it, right? I want them to have this experience. I want them to help. I want to help them. Right? And really just providing space. Like, yeah, you know what? It'll come. Just give it some time, give it some space. It'll come. I've had lots of clients. So I don't have any thoughts. I don't just, and some of that's mind clutter, right? And something else I might do if somebody's really just in that space and I might say, okay, let's just talk about this body tension, right? Listen to your body. What's going on, right? What's your body kind of saying? I mean, not to get too woo-woo necessarily about it, but just kind of pay attention to your body. What's happening there, right? What's happening with this mind clutter? What does your mind feel like? So that sometimes will bring up some thoughts and a different way of being able to articulate it. But there, a lot of times what people can't say verbally, they are able to say in writing. So that's another piece of it too. But yeah, I agree with Dara. The mapping process is just really, really powerful. To be able to just put it all out there on the page is really powerful. But yeah, Betsy, that does happen. That is.
And you can say them. I don't actually. I mean, there are times when I work with clients, I never look at their maps. So
Yeah.
if they're self-conscious about it, I don't need to see it actually at all. I mean,
Yeah.
you're welcome to share it with me, but I don't need to see it.
I've done that numerous times with first responders when they come in and they're just like, they don't even know how to articulate what's going on. They're sitting in the room with a stranger, right? And this is a very vulnerable space and it's really hard. I'll just hand them a piece of paper and I'm not even going to look at this. You don't have to say a word about it. And I'm just going to walk you through an experience. And I don't think I've ever had somebody not tell me what's on their map. I don't think I've ever had somebody not share with me what's going on. So, but yeah, really good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything else?
You just like to say you just have to trust the rope. Kind of a repelling analogy, right? You just got to trust the rope, trust the process, work the process. In natural functioning, that's where our resilience resides. That's where our ability to heal is found. And it can't be found no other place. So they have to be able to tap into that.
Well, thank you so much. We're right at time now, but this has been a really great session. Really appreciate this introduction to a really great modality. Thank you, Tanya and Derek, for your time. Everyone, I did just drop in the chat the link to the evaluation. I'll send it out via email as well. In the email, I'm going to include that workbook. I'm going to include the link to the iSystem website as well as Tanya and Derek's email. So if you have any follow-up questions, they said they're very available and there's lots of great resources there. So thank you everyone for being with us today. Again, thank you, Tanya and Derek. This has been great. Really
Yeah,
appreciate your
Thank you.
expertise.
It was a pleasure.
Have a good day, everyone.